A rat like Putin is at home in the dark, and long before he ordered his troops into Ukraine, he silenced opposing voices by any means necessary. Why then is the Kremlin still allowed to directly communicate with the masses about the situation in Ukraine? That's Putin's somewhat breezy description of this unjust bloody war from the president of Russia account on Twitter. So Twitter have now started labelling posts linked to the Russian government, urging users to stay informed, while Facebook is among the platforms to have blocked states-backed media in the EU. But this is far from the direct hit we saw them take against Donald Trump last year, who was axed from both platforms following the Capitol riots, with Twitter citing the risk of inciting violence. Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Putin actually committing heinous acts of violence? So why is Trump banned from Facebook until the risk of public safety has receded, when Putin is still allowed a voice on social media while putting global peace in jeopardy? And Calvin Robinson, can I just be very clear? I am actually not saying that I think the president of Russia should be banned from Twitter. What I'm saying is that Donald Trump should be reinstated immediately if they are prepared to leave the Kremlin and leave the Taliban on their woke platform. Oh, and by the way, the Chinese government and the Foreign Ministry of China, despite all of their actions towards the Uyghur Muslims.
No, I knew we'd be on the same page with this one, Dan. It's a clear hypocrisy on Twitter's part, but they shouldn't be closing down Russia, China and Afghanistan. What they should be doing is opening up Donald Trump, who wasn't inciting violence at all. And I know Rebecca's going to say the difference is that they were Trump was breaking Twitter's rules and Russia isn't. But that's not the case. These are controlling the pipelines of information. They're controlling what we see and what we don't see. That is so dangerous. I predicted.
Well, what were you going to say? What were you going to say?
Let them mansplain. Let them mansplain, Rebecca.
No, I'm not presuming for one moment I know what Rebecca's about to say.
We can just stick a blonde wig on Dan and then they don't even have to come in. So I completely understand why people think it's hypocritical, and I think it was, particularly when with the Taliban being on there, I do understand the frustration. My two defences of Twitter would be, it's not really a defence, but they're pretty bad about getting rid of people. I think we've probably all here been called terrible things on Twitter by people whose accounts were then allowed to stay on, because they have a process. I'm not sure it's a terribly good process, but they have a process of number of strikes of things you have to do before they want to get rid of you, and you have to tick certain boxes before you get removed. So that would be part of their defence. I also think the thing with Twitter is it's a company. They are allowed to set their own rules. They are allowed to decide what their rules are, and they are allowed to be hypocritical. If I have my own tech platform, I'm allowed to say everybody has to say Rebecca's amazing and anyone who doesn't can get banned.
But that is what it was about then, right? That is what it's about. They didn't get rid of Trump for inciting violence. They got rid of Trump because they wanted to steal his voice so that he could never become president again.
I wasn't part of the discussion to have Trump removed. I missed the woke meeting that week.
But it's more than being a private company. They have a monopoly on information at this point. They should be broken down and or regulated. Because we have to break down monopolies. We cannot let them have all the power and dictate what's censored and what's not.
There's a conversation to be had about how that works in terms of big tech and how much responsibility they have to prevent this from happening. And I agree, Andrew Doyle makes a really good point that I would often say, if you don't like it, start your own one. But Andrew has often pointed out that they make it very difficult for you to get funding to start new platforms. And that, I think, is a problem.
Well, of course. And actually, they actively try and stop right-wing platforms from being able to do this. So, Dawn, you're the deciding vote on this. Where do you come to?
Well, speaking as someone who was actually put in Twitter jail once for talking about my cervix... not starting World War III, by the way, just talking about a woman's body. Twitter put me in jail for that because I offended somebody. Ironically, somebody in Germany, which I think is where Twitter is based. Isn't it based in Germany, I think?
Well, based in San Francisco.
Yeah,
but presence.
Yeah, so in any case, I was put in Twitter jail because someone in Germany complained about me for talking about being a woman, not starting World War III. So the rules and regulations they run by, I have no idea what applies to what.
But it's terrifying, and I think the reason it's terrifying, Calvin, and I want to be very clear when I'm having this discussion, because it's not that I'm calling for further censorship, but the problem is that's where the debate goes, and that is always where the debate was going to go, because you will get a lot of people on the left who think that Putin shouldn't have a platform, who think the Taliban shouldn't have a platform. And so you start down this very slippery slope.
Yeah, it's Big Brother. It's 1984. How do we find out what's going on in the world if we can't discern the information for ourselves? We need transparency. We need to see from both sides of the arguments and then have the ability to make our own.
But at the
minds
moment,
up.
it's a predominantly privately owned or run company where they get to set their own rules.
That's the problem.
And possibly there is a bigger discussion to be had about it, but it's not an international service.
Although you look at the media in the UK, for example, and ITV, which is a private company, Channel 5, which is a private company, has a whole load of regulations that they have to follow. Now, again, I don't agree with that, but private companies don't just get a right to do whatever they want in the media space.
Then you have to ask the worst question ever, possibly, which is, what are the rules of the internet? Who owns the internet? What's the jurisdiction of the internet? That's the worst discussion
Which is why, by the way, Twitter should just not censor anyone, and they don't need having people on their platform. They don't have to having Donald Trump on there.
I don't think you think that, because if somebody is using Twitter to abuse you or me or Cavan or Dawn or anybody else every single day, then they shouldn't be allowed to...
I think if they're breaking the law, the police should be able to force a social media
Last time someone high-profile attacked me on Twitter, I supported their right to do so because it's their free speech.
But there's a difference.
Defending. But if someone's breaking the law, then they should be taken off.
Yeah,
exactly. So if they're threatening violence, if they're using it to threaten to kill you, for example.
But not necessarily saying they're going to kill you, but saying horrible things to you every single day that aren't elite, that are not going to kill you, but saying personal, nasty, scary, upsetting things.
My Twitter jail example, I mean, I was put in Twitter jail for saying what I said, and yet the person that complained about me also threatened to rape me, even though she was a she, evidently, but threatened to rape me at the same time.
Which is a crime.
And they were still on Twitter.
Yeah, and that's the irony.
Marvellous.
That's the irony.